Good morning, countrymen and women. As most of you might be aware by now, the Tonse Alliance a few days ago gave a notice to the Zambia Police Service through the Inspector General of Police to undertake countrywide protests against the planned amendment to the Republican Constitution. Now, ever since we gave our notice, we have had a number of reactions and responses to various, or rather by various individuals, government officials, including the Republican president. First of all, before I proceed to respond to the various statements that have been made on this matter by various government officials, including the Republican president, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, allow me first to answer a question which the media fraternity has been bombarding us with. And that question is, what are you going to do with regard to your planned protest, which is scheduled for Wednesday of this coming week, the 19th of March? What are you going to do if the Zambia Police Service does not give you a permit to proceed with this particular series of countrywide protests which you have planned? Now, in addressing that question, I want to actually make it very clear that when you look at the provisions of the law, specifically the Public Order Act, it does not require people who plan to hold a protest or a procession to get permission from the Zambia Police Service. The law does not require you to get permission. The law merely requires you to give notice. And as far as we are concerned, as Tonse Alliance, we have fulfilled that particular requirement of the law. We have given notice to the Zambia Police Service, and from here on, we are proceeding with our planned protests with no hindrance whatsoever. I want to make it very clear that the law does not provide that once you give notice, then the police should respond to your notice or this or that. No, there is no such requirement in the law. Provided you've given notice, then you're good to go. We have given the notice, we have complied with the requirements of the law, and we are good to go with our planned protests. And I want to emphasize that our planned protests across the country are going to be peaceful. They are going to be peaceful because all we want to do is to express our anger, to express our disappointment with the planned violation of the Constitution by the Republican president and his political party. Now, when you look at the provisions of the Constitution, at the very beginning, in Chapter 1, it provides a duty to each and every citizen to defend and protect the Constitution. So what we are merely doing is to defend and protect our Republican Constitution. And that requirement, the requirement to defend and protect the Constitution, is not just a right, it is a duty which must be fulfilled by each and every citizen of this republic. So we as Tonse Alliance, in giving the notice to the Zambia Police Service, we are merely fulfilling our duty to defend and protect the Republican Constitution. Having explained that, allow me to now get to the issues of that were raised by both the Republican president during his Youth Day address in Mwiimbu yesterday, as well as the Minister of Home Affairs and Internal Security, Jack Mwiimbu, in his interview with one of the tabloid papers in the country. I'll start with the submission, the statement that was issued by the Minister of Home Affairs. The Minister of Home Affairs says it is unreasonable for anybody to protest against the planned amendment to the Constitution when we have not seen the text of the planned amendment. That is the submission that was made by Jack Mwiimbu, that we as Tonse Alliance are behaving in an unreasonable manner because we are planning a protest and yet we have not seen the text. We have not seen the draft of the amendment to the Constitution. That is a statement from Jack Mwiimbu. Since Jack Mwimbu's statement is similar to the statement that was issued by President Hakainde Hichilema in Mongo yesterday, allow me to go to what President Hichilema said in Mongo so that we as Tonse Alliance can exhaustively deal with the statements by these two senior government officials together. So President Hakainde Hichilema, in his submission in Mongo yesterday, said two key things. Number one, he repeated what Jack Mwiimbu had said, to say it is unreasonable for us as Tonse Alliance to proceed to undertake countrywide protests when we have not even seen the draft. And then secondly, the president said something which we find very disturbing. He said that our planned protests were designed to beat up other people, to cause commotion, to bring about violence. And he was saying, why would youths go and beat up other youths in a protest? First of all, we are very disappointed with President Hakainde Hichilema's characterization of our planned protest. If you read our letter, which we wrote to the Zambia Police Service, it makes it very clear that the Tonse Alliance planned protests are going to be peaceful, that they are going to be properly coordinated, that in the respective provinces, people are going to move from their respective civic centers to their respective high courts, and that there are going to be ushers which will ensure that people move in an orderly fashion and that there is no disruption to the flow of traffic. So then the question that arises is, where did President Hakainde Hichilema get the idea that our planned protests are going to be violent, we are going to be beating up people, we are going to be causing commotion? Where did the president get that? Did any Tonse Alliance member say that the planned protests are going to be violent? No one said that. So in the absence of that, why would President Hakainde Hichilema mischaracterize our planned protests? What motive is he seeking to achieve by mischaracterizing our planned protests and portraying them as a planned violent protests when our letter makes it clear that these are going to be peaceful protests? The answer to that question, countrymen and women, might be in what the president might be planning against the Tonse Alliance as we undertake our protests. It is possible that President Hakainde Hichilema is deliberately mischaracterizing our planned protests so that on the day of our planned protest, he can deploy people, either cadres or police officers, to disturb our planned peaceful protests. And the basis he will use for that disturbance will be that we were planning violent protests. When our plans are very clear, our writing to the police has been very clear that our protests are going to be peaceful. And which brings us to the second question, which was repeated by both President Hakainde Hichilema as well as the Minister of Home Affairs, Jack Mwiimbu, to say, why is the Tonse Alliance planning to protest next week, Wednesday, against the amendment, the planned amendment to the Constitution, when we have not seen a draft of that planned amendment? The answer to that question, countrymen and women, is very simple. Because we are protesting. We are protesting next week because it is very clear that the president does not mean well for this entire constitutional amendment process from the word go. From the time that President Hakainde Hichilema was addressing women in Kasama, whereby he told those people in attendance in Kasama of northern province of Zambia that he had agreed with the Zambian people to amend the constitution. So the question then is, who did President Hakainde Hichilema agree with to amend the constitution when he told the public that he had agreed with the Zambian people to amend the constitution. Because when you talk about a constitutional amendment process, the key stakeholders there are us, opposition political party leaders, you have civil society organizations, you have church mother bodies, and various other groupings of citizens. So if none of these key groupings were consulted with regard to the planned amendment of the constitution, then who did President Hakainde Hichilema agree with to amend the constitution, as stated in his statement in Kasama during Women's Day celebrations a few days ago? So you can see, countrymen and women, that the president lied to the Zambian people when he said we had agreed to amend the constitution. He lied to the Zambian people because he had not agreed with any of us. And so the second question that arises is, why did the president lie to the Zambian people if his intentions for amendment of the constitution are genuine intentions? If the objectives of his planned amendment to the constitution are for the benefit of the Zambian people, why did the president lie to the people to say it had been agreed to amend the constitution? Also, when you move to Mongo, his address in Mongo, where he lied that we are going to undertake violent protests, when our letter is very clear that our planned protests are going to be peaceful. Again, he lied to the Zambian people. So he has lied on two separate occasions. Number one, by saying that he had consulted the Zambian people and that they had agreed to amend the constitution. And number two, by mischaracterizing the planned peaceful protests by the Tonse Alliance as violent protests where we are going to be sending youths to beat up other youths. So, countrymen and women, from these two lies that have been said by the Republican president so far, it is very clear to see that the president does not mean well with regard to this entire constitutional amendment. Contrary to the assertions of himself and his supporters, who claim that the planned amendment to the constitution are designed to empower women and to empower the youth, it is very evident from the affinity by the president to misrepresent facts and to lie to the people. It is very clear that the objectives of this planned amendment to the constitution are more to do with his personal benefit as president of Zambia, as opposed to the benefit that would accrue to the women and the youth and other ordinary citizens of this country. So, which answers our question, or rather, which answers the question which both Jack Mwiimbu and the president himself posed to us as Tonse Alliance, to say, why are you protesting against this planned amendment to the constitution when you have not yet gone through the text of the draft? The answer is simple, because from the very inception, this planned amendment to the Republican Constitution is shrouded in dishonesty. It is shrouded in lies. It is shrouded in manipulation. And so we as Tonse Alliance, given that the entire planned amendment of the Constitution is shrouded in dishonesty, it is shrouded in deception, it is shrouded in lies, we do not need to wait and see the actual draft. We do not need to wait and see the actual text of the planned amendment to the Constitution. We don't need to wait for that. We know that the entire process, that the entire planned activity of amending the Republican Constitution is for the benefit of one person only, and not the majority of the Zambian people, and not the youth, which the president claimed, and not the women, which the president claimed. It will benefit to amend the Constitution. It is very clear, based on the lies, based on the deception, and based on the dishonesty from the Republican president, both in Kasama as well as in Mongo yesterday, that this entire planned amendment to the Constitution is something that is not for the benefit of the Zambian people. And so for us as Tonse Alliance, that is the reason why we have decided to undertake the peaceful countrywide protests, which are scheduled for Wednesday, this coming week, which is the 19th of March 2025. If this process, I want to emphasize this point, if the process of a planned amendment to the Constitution was premised on truth, if it was premised on honesty, if it was premised on genuineness, if it was premised on good faith, we as Tonse Alliance would not have found reason to protest against it. We as Tonse Alliance would not have found reason to challenge it. We would not have done that. But this entire process, when you look at the timing, it is being brought at the last hour before election time. Why did they bring this at the very last minute before next year's elections? So you can see there are a lot of variables that President Hakainde Hichilema has brought on this proposed amendment to the Constitution, which make it necessary for us as Tonse Alliance to object to this particular proposed amendment. And I must make it very clear, countrymen and women, that we as Tonse Alliance want the best for this country. We want to ensure that our democracy is protected. We want to ensure that no one creates a back route, an illegal back route to staying in office beyond the prescribed time limit. We want to make sure that all the progressive clauses that were incorporated in our Constitution in the 2016 amendment are maintained. They are preserved. And it is a duty that should be shared by each one of us. And I want to make sure, or rather I want to communicate to the UPND government that if they feel confident that they have the support of the Zambian people, and if they feel confident that with or without the amendment of the Constitution, they can still come back to power after 2026 elections, then why are they so desperate to amend the Constitution before the 2026 general elections? If they are confident, because according to the UPND government, according to President Hakainde Hichilema and his supporters, they have delivered a lot of prosperity to Zambia, and they are going to record a landslide victory come 2026 general elections. So if that is the case, if they are truthful in their arguments, then why can't they wait to after elections? Under the current constitution, they wait for after the elections, then they amend the constitution in 2027 after the elections, because they are very confident that they are going to come back. I'll answer that question myself, countrymen and women. From where we stand as Tonse Alliance, we believe that the reason the UPND and this government are desperate to amend the constitution before the 2026 general elections is because they believe that the amended constitution might help them to win 2026 elections. They believe that the amended constitution might help them to win 2026 elections. If they did not believe that the amended constitution may help them to win the 2026 general elections, then they would not have been in this kind of panic. They would not have been in this kind of hurry to amend the Republican Constitution before the 2026 general elections. With the opposition that is there from the Zambian people, President Hakainde Hichilema and his UPND administration would have simply said that, okay, fine, you think we are desperate to amend the Constitution so that we can retain power. If that's what you think, that's fine. We'll abandon this process. We'll come back to it in 2027 after we have retained power without an amendment to the Constitution. That is what President Hakainde Hichilema is supposed to do. And me, as a spokesperson of the Tonse Alliance, as president of the Patriots for Economic Progress, I hereby challenge President Hakainde Hichilema to postpone his planned amendment to the Constitution to 2027. If his argument that it is not intended to help him win the election next year is to be believed, let him postpone this proposed amendment. Let him take it to 2027. And then we can amend the Constitution at that time without any suspicion that the amendment is designed to manipulate the upcoming election. It's as simple as all that. Let the president postpone this planned amendment to the Constitution to 2027. Since his argument is that he is going to come back into office after 2026, that there is no opposition in Zambia, that the opposition is dead, that it's going to be a walkover in 2026. Well, if it's going to be a walkover in 2026, let him postpone the planned amendment to the constitution, let him move it to 2027. Then we shall see whether without a constitutional amendment, President Hakainde Hichilema can still be re-elected into office. And my submission, countrymen and women, is that he cannot be re-elected into office after 2026 elections without a manipulation of the constitution. The only lifeline which President Hakainde Hichilema has to being re-elected into office is through a constitutional amendment which would make it favorable for him to use the back door to retain power. Without such a lifeline, he's on the way out. Whether he likes it or not, he's on the way out, because the Zambian people have seen for themselves that the UPND administration have failed to deliver on their aspirations. The Zambian people have seen for themselves that there is double standards in the application of the law. They have seen that people who insult former president, 60th Republican President, Dr. Edgar Chagwa, who insult him and call him all sorts of names, they go scot-free. And people like Mwiimbu are quickly apprehended, quickly sent across the country, and to the other side where they don't have relatives, they're incarcerated without being taken to court, and so on and so forth. People have seen those double standards. People have seen that there are double standards in the application of the law on hate speech. People have seen that there are double standards in the fight against corruption, whereas others are being incarcerated, like GBM at Mwiimbu, and their property seized publicly. For those who are undertaking, corrupt activities under the current administration, the president says, don't say their names, don't mention their names, telling the Anti-Corruption Commission and other law enforcement agencies that they should be investigated quietly. Was GBM investigated quietly? Was GBM sentenced quietly? It was in the public domain. And how can you have double standards which are applicable to one grouping and other standards which are applicable to another grouping? We have seen that the Zambian people have realized that this government does not mean well for the local economy. They have continued to export power at the expense of local industries. As we are told, there are a lot of manganese processing plants in the Serenje area which have actually shut down, and thousands of people have lost their jobs because of the road shedding. So you are destroying your local economy so that you can export electricity and build another country's economy. Clearly, we have people who don't care about the Zambian people in office. We have people who have no plan for this country in office. And the Zambian people are very anxious about 2026. They cannot wait to hold the general elections. They cannot wait to remove the current administration. They cannot wait to usher in a new and better administration to manage and direct the affairs of this country towards prosperity and a better living standard for the people. Because we have everything that we need. We have all the natural resources. The only thing that the Republic of Zambia has lacked is proper leadership. And the Zambian people experimented in 2021. They realized that their experiment did not work out, and they are going to try another set of leaders come 2026. There's no question about that. And President Hakainde Hichilema is trying to use this constitutional amendment to find a backdoor route to coming back into office, because he knows that even as he is disparaging the opposition to say that the opposition are scattered, the opposition are not united, he knows that we in the Tonse Alliance are capable of removing him from office. Lastly, countrymen and women, allow me to address that last point which I raised, to say that the opposition is not united and therefore it would be very difficult to remove the current administration. Personally, I do not subscribe to that. Even as a collective Tonse Alliance, we do not subscribe to that narrative. I'll tell you one thing. The opposition in this country have never been united. We have never been united. But yet, we have consistently and continuously changed administrations. Take, for instance, 1991. There were several other political parties other than MMD, but MMD was the main party. And so MMD carried the day against all the other political parties, such as National Party, such as National Democratic Alliance, NADA, and so on and so forth. You fast forward to 2011. Again, 2011, we saw that UPND PF pact collapsed in 2011 before the elections. The UPND PF pact collapsed. And the MMD was driving a narrative that the opposition are not united and that the MMD cannot be removed from office because the PF UPND pact had collapsed, that so-called alliance. And we saw what happened. The people looked around, they looked at the main vehicle that was capable of removing the government of the day. They identified that vehicle as the Patriotic Front. And people voted en masse for the Patriotic Front. And the PF alone, without any alliance with any other political party, managed to remove the MMD government in 2011. So there in 2011, again, the opposition was not united, but there was one big force. There was one main vehicle that people identified was capable of removing the then MMD government from office. And then you fast forward to 2021, the same applies. There were more than 13 presidential candidates. And yet, people looked at who had the biggest capacity to remove the government of the day at that particular time. And they saw that that political party was the UPND. And so the people, even if they did not agree 100% with the UPND, provided they identified it as a vehicle which was capable of removing the government at that particular time, they went and rallied behind it, and the UPND was able to win the election with a landslide. The same is applicable in 2026. We, as Tonse Alliance, are the main vehicle which can remove the UPND from office. And the Zambian people know that for a fact. And it is seen in our performance in the various by-elections that we hold. The elections that we have lost so far, the Electoral Commission of Zambia have stolen those votes from us. Look at Kawambwa, look at Pambashe. They have stolen our votes. But despite them stealing our votes, we have come a very close second to the winner. And in Petauke, we managed to win that by-election despite all the government machinery which was brought there, despite more than 100 district commissioners and their vehicles who were pumped into that by-election, despite more than 15 cabinet ministers who were pumped into that by-election, we still won. So it is very clear, countrymen and women, that the Tonse Alliance vehicle is capable of removing the UPND administration with or without any collaboration with the other smaller political parties. We are the main movement. Whether other smaller parties come and join us, whether Socialist comes to join us, whether CF comes to join us or they don't, it does not matter. Come 2026, we in the Tonse Alliance are going to carry the day, because every reasonable Zambian can see for themselves that the only way they can remove the UPND administration from office is through the Tonse Alliance. So for us, we do not believe that the fact that these other small parties are not willing to come and join the Tonse Alliance, it will undermine the ability of the Tonse Alliance to remove the UPND government in 2026. Those who are not willing to come and join us, they are going to remain spectators after 2026. They are going to remain spectators. We as Tonse Alliance have the capacity. Look at Petauke. Did we collaborate with any of the other smaller political parties for us to win Petauke? No, we did not. Every other smaller political parties, they felt very highly of themselves. They felt that they are capable by themselves. We went into Petauke. We beat every other smaller political party, including the ruling party itself, and we emerged victorious. The same is applicable in 2026. These other smaller parties who think very highly of themselves, these other smaller political parties who have an exaggerated sense of self-importance, if they decide that they are not going to rally behind the Tonse Alliance before 2026, that is well and good. They can remain. But the Tonse Alliance will proceed and ensure that we record victory in the 2026 general election. With that, countrymen and women, I believe that we have addressed most of the key issues that needed to be addressed, specifically issues related to the protests that we in the Tonse Alliance have planned for Wednesday of this coming week, which is the 19th of March. These are going to be countrywide protests. We have complied with all the requirements of the law, and those who are coming to participate should not be worried about the issues of compliance with the law. We have complied with the law. Our protests are going to be peaceful. Our protests are provided for in the Republican Constitution, in the Bill of Rights. We have the right to and liberties to express ourselves. We have the rights and liberties to assemble and to express our discontent regarding any national issue. In this particular case, we are going to protest to express our discontent towards this manipulation or planned manipulation of the Republican Constitution by the current government. We remain resolute, we remain strong, and we shall deliver on the mandate of the Zambian people, both now and in 2026. Thank you very much, and have a good morning.